Good. Please open your Bible with me to James chapter 5, or James chapter 4, actually. But anyway, we're already small, and so all it takes is a sickness and somebody out of town, and we seem even smaller. Although Shannon brought Samantha back, so she helps fill in. James chapter 4, starting verse 13, be reading from chapter 5, verse 6. Hear the word of the Lord. Come now, you who say, today or tomorrow we will go into such and such a town and spend a year there and trade and make a profit. Yet you do not know what tomorrow will bring. What is your life? For you are a mist that appears for a little time and then vanishes. Instead, you ought to say, if the Lord wills, we will live and do this or that. As it is, you boast in your arrogance. All such boasting is evil. So, whoever knows the right thing to do and fails to do it, for him it is sin. Come now, you rich, weep and howl for the miseries that are coming upon you. Your riches have rotted and your garments are moth-eaten. Your gold and silver have corroded, and their corrosion will be evidence against you and will eat your flesh like fire. You have laid up treasure in the last days. Behold, the wages of the laborers who mowed your fields, which you kept back by fraud, are crying out against you, and the cries of the harvesters have reached the ears of the Lord of hosts. You have lived on the earth in luxury and in self-indulgence. You have fattened your hearts in a day of slaughter. You have condemned, you have murdered the righteous person. He does not resist you. May the Lord add his blessings to the reading of his holy word. Well, who's the boss? Who's the boss, Raymond? He doesn't know. Once a guy from one of the gym guys coming on Sunday night from Danville told me that he was wondering, because there were some guys from Danville and there were some guys from Castle County, and he was wondering whose turf this is. Which gang does it belong to? You know, since we're halfway between Yanceyville and Danville, is this Danville turf? Or is this Caswell County turf? In other words, who's the boss? And I thought, it's our turf. You know, we're the boss here. Sometimes we got to make that obvious. You understand, sometimes the boss has to make clear that he's the boss. Once when I was in college doing a cross-country workout, our coach saw that we did not precisely follow his instructions. And he was obviously, he wasn't a shouter. But you could just tell he was not happy. And so he came inside the track in the middle of the field and just gathered us around and said, and I believe this is almost, if I remember rightly, this is precisely what he said. It's my way or the highway. If you don't like it, you can leave. You know, you're scholarship athletes. You know how much power a college coach has over his athletes? He pulls their scholarship. I mean, you got to, go find a job at McDonald's. Because, you're done college. But what he was saying was, I'm the boss here. And he apparently believed that sometimes everyone needs to be reminded of who the boss is. So when it comes to a battle of the wills, maybe the gym guys don't want to stop for what we call halftime and have the Bible study, or maybe us runners, we want to do our own thing. We didn't like what the coach told us to do. Well, then the coach, the boss, must win that battle. Giving in makes them the boss, right? If we let the guys do whatever they want, they don't want to hear the Bible study, well, then they're the boss. It's their turf then. My old coach thought he had to remind us that he's the boss, and I was the captain of the cross-country team, and I thought, well, then it's my responsibility to apologize to the coach on behalf of the team, even though I personally was not one of those who had disobeyed the coach. I tried to do what he said. The others didn't, and yet I had to apologize. I'm sorry, coach. But he was the boss. People ask rhetorically, of course, now, who's the boss? Often after demonstrating that they are the boss, that they're in control. The basketball will stop when we say so. This workout will be done my way. I'll cancel your scholarship if you don't follow my instructions. It's a way to, they say, well, who's the boss here? I'm the boss, in case we've forgotten. So we say it and we show it so that it's clearly recognized. Someone might say, you can't keep letting your employees walk all over you like that. You got to show them who's the boss. A coach might rev up his players in a pregame speech. You know what you see in the sports page, what those guys on the other team said about you. Go out there and show them who's the boss. Someone might advise, often rightly, I think, probably often good advice to parents, you have to show your kids who's the boss. You actually do. If you say, stop playing video games and it's time to go to bed, then you cannot let them keep playing the video games. If it comes to a battle of the wills and they don't want to stop playing and go to bed, then you must win that battle. Giving in then makes them the boss, and next time they'll try it again. So now I think you should be careful what you say. Don't go around casually saying things where you don't really want to back it up. Be careful what you say, where you draw that line. But once you've drawn that line, you must not let it be crossed. If you have to go in and yank out the video game from the wall and shut off the light yourself, well, you better do it, because they need to know who's the boss. It's important to know who the boss is. I think it's vitally important. But if sorry, Rachel's father couldn't stay here, but he was in the military. I'm sure people in the military clearly understand. You got to know the chain of command. You got to know who gives the orders. Right? It's just not, well, we feel like, the platoon feels like going this way. No. You got to know who the boss is. But if you listen to the way we often talk and act, you'd think, we think, we're the boss. Oh, we might know better when we're talking doctrine in church. Sure, we're here and we're going to say, oh, God's the boss here. But when we're being casual, letting our guard down and revealing kind of who we really are, what we really believe, what we live by, we listen to our everyday speech. What do we show? Who we think is the boss. We see that here in two basic parts. First, what do you say? Second, money talks. According to your own words, first, what do you say? Who's the boss? What do you say? Listen to what you say. Listen to your own words. And hear who you think the boss is, often by omission, what we don't say. What do we mean? Listen to our words. What do we mean about two things? These are subpoints here. Two things. First, about ourselves, and second, about God. What do you say? Listen to your words. What are you saying? Verse 13, come now, you who say. What are you saying? Today or tomorrow, we will go into such and such a town and spend a year there and trade and make a profit. So this person here is planning a business venture. He's planning the time to go today or tomorrow, then the place, such and such a town, maybe like Danville, then the duration, spend a year there, and then the activity, trade, and then the outcome, make a profit. It's all planned out. Now, is there anything wrong with making plans? No, planning itself is not sinful, obviously not. It's not necessarily unbelieving to carefully plan how you want your life to go, how you want something to go. A good business person is a good planner, takes everything into account that he can foresee. If you're going to open a restaurant, then you plan, well, what are you going to serve? How much are you going to charge? Who are you trying to appeal to? Are there the customers for this in this area? If you're not, you're going to be a bad business person. How much are you going to spend yourself on the material, on the lease, what the atmosphere of the restaurant's going to be like? It's going to be more fast food, it's going to be more sit down and casual. Everything is planned. It's wise to make plans, but it's how you talk about your plans that matters. How you hold on to them. Don't hold on too tightly, because they might get yanked away. You know what happens if you're holding on too tightly to something that gets yanked away? It's not pleasant. Was that how you talk about your plans, how you tightly you hold them? This shows a lot about you. What do you think about yourself? What do you think about God? When I was living in Singapore, I planned on getting a master's degree in theology at a local seminary, and I was desperate for that to happen. I was sure my program was going to start soon, in a couple months. And I then could then quit the job I was in and start studying, when suddenly I got a letter from the seminary saying that I had to start next year. Be like a year and a half until I could start. It just destroyed all my plans. And I was upset. I was really upset. The best laid schemes of mice and men often go askew. So if a good planner takes everything into account, and our best laid plans often go askew, then don't we need to take that into account too? And say so? What do you say? Do your words show that you understand that your plans will go askew? Does it show, by the way you talk, that you know you can't take into account all the unknowns of the future? Do you speak with certainty about the future that you don't really know with certainty? What does that say? If that's what we do, it's what I was doing at that time. What does that say that you think you can be certain about the future? What does that say about who deep down you think the boss is? In verse 14, we're told that what we easily forget, you do not know what tomorrow will bring. What is it that we don't take into account in our planning? That we don't know the future. There's a big question mark there. Any plan, you better put a question mark. There's unknowns coming. Who are we? We like to think we're the boss, that we're in control. We know it all. We're on top of it all. The first sin, was served up to us with the promise that we will, if we take it, we will be like God. We'll be the boss, that we'll know, we'll have the knowledge we need, but we don't know, and we hate to admit that. We like to assert certainties, even when we're not certain. But our only certainties about the future are those few things that God himself has promised us about the future. Really three, basically. That Christ is coming, that there is a judgment, and that there is a resurrection. A reason that some Christians are attracted to, I think, to some teachings about the end times, are kind of popular out there, that promise these detailed plans about what will happen. The European Union, I remember this when I was a teenager. European Union consists of 10 nations, and it's going to be the 10-nation confederacy in the book of Revelation with the 10. Of course, now the European Union is like 25 nations, so that one went by the wayside. Funny, the people that teach this never come out and say, I'm sorry, I was all wrong. I've never heard anyone come out and say that. But anyway, this stuff that's being put out there, you can know these detailed plans about the future, about everything that's going to unfold, when Christ will return, and what will definitely happen leading up to it, so that you can basically plot it carefully. I think one of the selling point of that for many is that they love the sense of certainty, that they can now be sure of things that are coming. They can even maybe set a date for Christ's return. So that way they can quit their job, a few months ahead of time. They don't have to worry about working more. They don't have to worry about paying their mortgage, because by the time they'll never be able to foreclose on them before Christ returns, that kind of thing. They're sure that it's coming. But God doesn't offer that kind of certainty. He doesn't. He says here, God's word, you do not know what tomorrow will bring. Get used to it. There's things coming, you do not know what it is. He intends on keeping it that way, so that we'll be humble and dependent. That's what he's after, not our certainty. Who are you? Here, maybe you're a business person. Nothing wrong with that. That's fine. You're out to make a profit. That's good. That's fine. Understand. You want a sure thing. Like maybe being the only Chinese restaurant in town. Wouldn't that make it a sure thing? No competitors. Everyone wants Chinese food. They got to go to your place. But you weren't created just to do business, to be a money-making machine. Sure, you may be called to do business. That is, I believe God can call you to open a Chinese restaurant or whatever other business you're doing. That's your calling from God. But you were made to do business, not just as an end in itself, not just to make money, but to glorify God. Now, hopefully you'll make enough money to support yourself and your family, maybe your church too. But you need to know who you are, that you're more than an economic animal. Here, the business person on a business venture is reminded, what is your life? In the middle of verse 14, You're a mist. You're like a little morning fog that appears for a little time and then vanishes. It's there at the sunrise, but the sun quickly burns it away. That's your life. It's too short to spend only on money making. It will soon be over. And if all you have to show for it is a nice house and some gadgets and some jewelry and some cash in the bank that the grandkids are all going to waste on video games and cell phone bills and trips to Florida, that's it. Don't do that. Don't waste your life on accumulating wealth. What is your life? It's very short, like a mist quickly dissipated by the rising sun. What do we say? What do we say maybe by example, and how we live our lives? We can't make it to church Sunday mornings because got to make sure the shop gets on its feet, got to squeeze a few more dollars out of our Sunday mornings. We're saying life is about money. Give me more, that's what I need. Success, as the world defines it. Your life is more than that. What do you say about God in the way we talk? Listen to your own words. The way we plan our business ventures. How do you make God part of your plans? He says here, instead of the way we have been talking, in verse 15, instead of asserting that our best laid plans aren't going to go askew, we have it under control. Instead of that, you ought to say, not that you're the boss, that your plans are certain, but if the Lord wills, He's the boss. You can go ahead and make your plans. That's fine. But understand, if the Lord wills, they'll come out like you want them to. So what do you say? If the Lord wills. Notice it's not, by the way, if we submit to God's will or if we cooperate with His will. Then it'll come about. If we help God out to do what He wants to do. If we surrender to His will. Any of these kind of slogans that people like to say today. As if God can will something to come about. Maybe He wills that you go to Danville and set up a shop and make money. Maybe that's His will. But you think, if I don't cooperate, His will won't come about. That we can make His plans go askew. The best laid plans of mice and men often go askew. What about the best laid plans of God? Do they go askew? And so we think we can make His plans go askew if we don't do our part, as if His will depends on us. No. Obviously, that's not what James is thinking here. Notice clearly the assumption that James is working with when he says, instead you ought to say, if the Lord wills, that my plans for a business venture, my master's degree in theology in Singapore, my best laid plans be successful, if He wills that, then that will happen, right? That's what he's assuming here, isn't he? If He doesn't will that, then it won't happen, right? Isn't that just what he's assuming? James is. That's just assumed, because James assumes that all believers, at least theoretically, understand that. Now, sometimes we may forget, and so we may plan and talk like we believe it all depends on us, or that we can make it come about if we just plan it right, we work it right. Sometimes it might just be a doctrine that we intellectually agree with and makes no impact on our lives. It hasn't shaped our heart so that we see the sovereignty of God in all things. But that's what James is trying to do here, is to get that doctrine to shape how we see life. James absolutely assumes that God's will is always done. We don't know what that will is until it is revealed in the actual events of our lives, but it is always accomplished. What happens today or tomorrow is what the Lord wills, right? So what do you say? If the Lord wills, we will live. If He doesn't will that, we won't live. So the duration of our lives is in the hands of God. God governs how long we live. God will decide whether we make it to tomorrow and when we die. Now, we often assume that, we just kind of assume that we will live until tomorrow and through tomorrow, because that's our experience, So far, We've always lived. We've never had a day where the next day we didn't live so far. That's all we know. We're all limited by our experience. One day, though, we'll be wrong. We need to understand that. One day we'll assume that we'll wake up on tomorrow, and we won't. So we're handicapped by our experience. We've never died yet. I'm pretty sure none of you have. I didn't ask you personally, but I'm going out on a limb and making that wild guess. And we never experienced not living until tomorrow. We've never been through that. And we never even talked with other people who've been through that. So, there's a lot of things we haven't experienced yet. We can talk to others and kind of get a sense of what it was like. I've never been to China, but some people have. You can talk to people who've been to China, what it's like, and get a sense of what it's like. But we've never talked with someone who told us a story about how they were going, I was going to open a store in the mall, and I worked hard to do it. I had all my plans laid out. I put off a relationship with God until later. The store was going to be my life, and then I had a heart attack and died. And so I learned that life isn't all about business, making a career. We've never gotten to talk to anyone like that. And so, because we never experienced it ourselves, and we never talked to someone who has experienced it, we could pretend that those people do not exist. But they do. If it's the Lord's will, we will live. God is ultimately in control of life and death. We do not know how long our vapor-like life will linger in the air. But God knows, because it's according to His will. So what do you say? If the Lord wills, we will do this or that. Think about that. Think about that statement. We will do this or that. Basically, everything we do is because the Lord wills. Now, some people are afraid of the idea of the complete sovereignty of God over all things. So they will teach, well, okay, maybe God has a few kind of goals that He's determined to do. Like maybe saving the people He selected, or rescuing Israel out of Egypt. These big goals. But much of history, much of the events of the world, He kind of just leaves up to the randomness of, quote, free will. So what people eat for breakfast, what they watch on TV, or if a pass is completed in the football game, or if your business succeeds or fails, all of that is at the mercy of the chaos of human choices, they think. That God is not He's not a control freak. Sure, He's the boss, but He lets a lot of things slide. He's not a control freak. But notice here, James says that everything we plan in our business venture, the this or that, we'll do this or that if it's God's will. The this or that we thought to do, how much sugar to add to our General Chow's chicken, how many customers will come to our shop. Everything, all the activities and accomplishments of our lives depend on the Lord's will. He's the boss. So what do you say? Now, Christians used to commonly say something like, Lord willing. This will happen, I'm going to open a shop, Lord willing. I heard someone say that last week. I was kind of, wow, something back from the past, a blast from the past. Somebody said, Lord willing. In Acts chapter 18, verse 21, Paul left Ephesus and said, I will return to you again if God wills. In 1 Corinthians chapter 4, verse 19, he writes, I will come to you soon to Corinth if the Lord wills. But he wasn't like legalistic about it. And so in Romans chapter 15, verse 24, he wrote of his plans, I hope to see you in passing as I go to Spain. He didn't say God willing there or anything. He planned to go to Spain. Now, we don't know if he ever made it, if his best laid plans went askew or not. The point isn't to mindlessly tack on that phrase, if the Lord wills, to all our future indicatives. The I wills. Every time you say I will, you got to, Lord willing, without thinking about it. The point is to acknowledge first in your heart that our lives are entirely in His hands. Even the little details, the this or the that of our business dealings, all of that is determined by Him. So acknowledge then who you are, that you're not just an economic animal, that you're not the boss, that God is. if you don't confess that, if you talk certainly about your plans, then in verse 16, you are boasting in arrogance. And he says, all such boasting is evil. Now notice the root problem there. It's not the failure to say a little tagline onto all your statements about the future. It's the arrogance that makes us think we're the boss. Our plans won't go askew. The expression of that attitude is called boasting. It's arrogant not to believe with your heart and acknowledge with your mouth that it's the Lord's will that determines how long you live and what you do, every this or that. Boasting, the opposite of that, does not acknowledge that our life is vapor-like. Boasting does not say that God governs the length of our lives and everything that we manage to do with it. So, in verse 17, it could be translated as therefore. It's temptation to read verse 17 as sort of this theological principle, kind of just standing there all by itself. But it begins in Greek, just like here in English, it's translated with so or with therefore. It could be translated. Therefore, it's the same word in Greek. Therefore, so it's a connection to what comes prior to it. In other words, because it is arrogant to not believe in the heart and confess with the lips that how long you live and whatever you do is in the hands of God, that He's the boss, then, therefore, here's a logical application of that principle. So, therefore, again, since the Lord determines whether we live or we do anything, whether our business succeeds or not, whether we get rich or we don't even manage to earn $1, then this is not just a piece of theological dogma that we debate. Maybe we intellectually accept, the Calvinist creed of the full sovereignty of God over all things. Maybe we're convinced of it doctrinally. But then once we're done playing with our doctrine, we go on living and talking as if we were the boss. That's not, James wants to blow that away. So, because we believe this about ourselves, we're in God's hands, every this or that, we believe God is in control, it acts according to His will, in verse 17, then whoever knows the right thing to do, what's the right thing to do? Acknowledge that God is the boss in your heart and with your lips. Whoever knows that and fails to do it, for him, it is sin. Failing to do something can be a sin. There are sins of commission, what we actively do, and sins of omission, things that we fail to do, that we were supposed to do. Here in this context, we were supposed to acknowledge in our daily plans, first in our hearts, in our lips, that God is the boss, that will everything we do, whatever we do, won't necessarily be by our plans, will be by His will. We're supposed to acknowledge that. And if we don't, we've sinned. So, chapter 5, come now. Same way he opened verse 13. Come. He's inviting people. Come to the boss. Let him remind you of who the boss is. What do you say? Some say, come on, you know what they say. You know what they say. Money talks. A comedian joked, if money talks, all it ever says to me is goodbye. But we all know that money talks. And what it says to us is, this is why we love it so much. This is why we love money so much. You know what money says to us? It talks. It does. It says, you're the boss. Right? Other people, you tell them to do stuff, and they can disobey. Money does exactly what you want. You spend $20 on something, you get $20 of whatever you spend it on. It gives you what you paid for. So, that's why we have the golden rule, You know the golden rule? He who has the most gold rules. Money gives whoever has the most of it power. Right? Money gives you power. And whoever has the most money has the most power. The Chinese have a saying, if you have enough money, you can even make the demons grind your rice. I'm not sure how you pay off the demons, but I guess you can. So if we can be wealthy, we think, We can get nearly everyone to do what we want. Yeah, right? Come on. If you're like some billionaire, people are falling all over themselves to do your bidding, to be your friend, to be on your good side, hoping you'll stuff a little $100 bill in their pocket. Right? Money talks. Then we'll be happy if we have it. That's what it says to us. We'll have everything we want. We'll have the best food, the best house, the best medical care. We'll have security and we'll live in comfort. We'll drive in luxury. We'll be the boss. Come now, he says in verse 1. You rich. He's inviting the rich. Maybe those of us who want to be rich. You've avoided coming and listening before. Too busy making your money, chasing those dollars. Too busy running your business. You won't come to church now. You got to make more money. Maybe you think, I'll come later, after I have enough cash saved up, after the business is secure, you got enough money in the bank. You'll see God then. Not yet, after all. You want to be rich. You want to make yourself rich today or tomorrow. I'll make money. But that's why James says here, come now. Now. Weep and howl for the miseries that are coming upon you. You think you're the boss, or soon about to become one. You can tell everyone what to do because you have plenty of money to throw around. But wail for your soon coming judgment. Then James, I think, he's looking back he's standing as if at the judgment seat. Looking back from the standpoint of that future judgment, looking back to our age now, the future judgment, one of those events of the future you can be certain of. He's there, he's hearing what God will say then, and he's telling us now. He's telling these selfish rich now what they will hear at the judgment. These unrighteous, bossy, arrogant rich, what they will hear at the soon coming judgment. And they'll hear 4 searing verdicts coming down from the judgment seat. First, your riches, what you spent so much time chasing after, have rotted. Your garments are moth-eaten. In verse 2. Now all the stuff they piled up, the wealth they've hoarded, the Rolls Royces in their garages are all rusted and fallen into powder. The Rolex watches, a different one for every occasion. Right? Every day of the week, they got a new one. The newest gadgets, $5,000 silk Italian suits. All moths have eaten them all up. Their designer purses, all the stuff they're so proud of. All of that is worthless now. It's dust. It's garbage. Your gold and silver have corroded, in verse 3. Now, they may have thought, hey, precious metals, gold, does it rust? But eventually, even it will turn to dust. At the judgment seat, James says, their corrosion, their gold and silver, their corrosion will be evidence against you. It's like an exhibit in a trial. You know, in a court, in a trial, here's an exhibit. Just prove something. Exhibit A, judgment seat, you corrupt, wealthy person. Here's a pile of dust. This is all that's left. Disintegrated from those gold coins you spent your life chasing. Is that it? Then weep and howl for the miseries that are coming upon you. The corrosion will not only tarnish the gold and silver, but will consume the flesh of the rich like fire consumes dry wood. Second, you rich, you bosses in this world, you laid up treasure in the last days. At the end of verse 2. The last days being this age. This is the last days we're in right now. This is the time when the judgment is coming. John the Baptist said that the axe is laid at the root of the trees. In other words, the lumberjack is just about to chop this thing down. Judgment is right here. It's coming soon. And the kingdom of God is breaking into this world. So you should be seeking it. But instead of seeking it, you sought Porsches, mansions, the biggest HD TVs, the swankiest cruises, first-class tickets to Europe, a vacation house by the beach, more money in your account. That's what you sought in these last days. The indulgent rich got their wealth, not by offering people a service that they wanted or needed, not by actually doing something really useful, but by cheating, by not paying their workers. They promised men a day's pay for mowing their fields. Come mow my fields. And going out, they went, these poor workmen, with their swing blades, chopping down the crop or the wheat or the grass or whatever it was. And when the day was over, the rich refused to pay them. Sue me, they might say to them. And what were the cheated workers to do? There were no courts that would hear them. The corrupt rich would just pay off the judges. Today, some employers in America want to hire illegal immigrants because they know they can pay them less than minimum wage. They can make them work longer hours than the law is supposed to allow. And if they cheat them, what are they going to do? They're not going to go to the government for justice. They can't. That's why they want them here for that. They use fraud to make more money for themselves. But the wages they refuse to pay, and remember that money talks. Oh, it really does. But it says something very, very differently than what these wealthy rich people, these corrupt wealthy people were thinking. Here, sure, money is talking. But listen to what it's saying to God. The money is talking to God. It's crying out for justice. The cries of the cheated workers are rising, he says, to the Lord of hosts. In other words, the Lord, the master, the boss, host, the armies. He's the boss of armies. So begin your wailing and gnashing of teeth now, in this age, right now, because your doom is sure. You want to be certain of something about the future? Be certain of judgment on the oppressors. Third, you want to be certain of the future? Be certain of God's judgment on the self-indulgent. In verse 5, here's what the selfish rich will hear. Here's something you can be certain of. You hear, and they will hear in the future from the Lord in Judgment Day. You have lived on the earth in luxury and self-indulgence. In the parable of the rich man and Lazarus, remember, the rich man is told in hell, he's begging for just the luxury of a drop of water to give him some relief. And he's told, remember that you in your lifetime received good things. So all the luxuries he had in this life, they're gone. And that is all the comfort he will ever get. Sodom. People think of Sodom in the book of Genesis. Well, we normally think it was condemned for one particular sin. But in Ezekiel chapter 16, verse 49, the Lord says, not only was Sodom condemned, destroyed for that abomination, but also Sodom had, quote, excess of food and prosperous ease, but did not aid the poor and needy. Think of that. Put that right beside, from the Lord's perspective, homosexuality, wealth and ease that did not aid the poor and needy. Equivalent sins. American Christians now have almost no sense that ostentation, maybe the so-called pastor with a net worth in the millions, a mansion to live in, self-indulgence in the face of needy neighbors, almost no sense now in American Christianity that is a sin on par with the abomination of homosexuality. We think today, we're just individualists, and what we do with our money is between us and God. If we want to splurge it on ourselves, that's our choice. And of course, the God they think of is the one they make in their own image, who will let them do anything they want. Here God will say, though, at the judgment, you have fattened your heart in a day of slaughter. You're like the fattened calf. They take a calf, they stuff it with all the food at once, they coddle it, they make it comfortable, and this calf thinks, man, life is great. I gorge myself every day. I live in luxury. I'm not required to do anything. And it doesn't realize, of course, it's being set up for being slaughtered. Here, the self-indulgent rich are being set up for their own slaughter. And the great irony, the real twist, is their own self-indulgence, their own greed that the Lord uses to set them up. Fourth, finally, the self-indulgent rich will hear, and you can be certain of it, in verse 6, you have condemned and murdered the righteous person. He does not resist you. They'll be reminded of the poor they took advantage of to get rich. They were the bosses on earth. Thought they could do whatever they wanted. In this country, for a while, it was slavery. They thought they could do whatever they wanted with their slaves, and then judgment came. 1 out of 4 white men in the South were killed. Think of that. Think of the blood, and many of the others were wounded. The judgment came on this earth. The selfish rich, because they took advantage of the poor. What happens? Well, the poor then can't afford to eat well. They went out, with a swing blade, they worked a day, they got cheated out of their pay, they go home, they can't eat, they can't afford food for themselves, their poor child is sick with chicken pox or whatever, and it dies because they can't nourish it well enough. Mary and I went to the funeral of a boy in Ethiopia that died of chicken pox. We don't think of people dying of chicken pox here because we have enough nutrients in medical care to keep them alive. But if you're that weak, you're that malnourished, you die of almost anything. They couldn't afford medical care, so they died. They couldn't go to the courts and resist their exploitation. They were all corrupt. They were paid off. Maybe for us in America, they were inconvenient. They were the product of our sexual self-indulgence that we're not willing to take responsibility for. So we dispose of them so we can continue with our lifestyle rather than having another mouth to feed. These victims can't resist because they are the most vulnerable. They can't even be represented in court because they aren't recognized as persons. They don't have any, quote, legal standing. They are classified as non-persons, not because of biology or genetics, but because our society has determined that they stand between us and the life of self-indulgence we want to enjoy. So they could go, we say. On the judgment day, we'll be reminded of every one of the people who were murdered to make our life of ease possible. You can be certain of that. Do you want to be certain of something about the future? You want to be certain of something what the Lord is going to will to happen? We can be certain that we'll be reminded of the righteous person, the righteous man, the one who, like a lamb led to the slaughter, was silent, who did not resist. Now, he did not resist, not because he had no power to resist. He could have called down 12 legions of angels and resisted. He was, after all, the Lord of hosts. But because he did not come to be served, but to serve and to give his life a ransom for many, not to indulge himself, but to buy back his people, to buy us back from the judgment that is sure to come. That's why the righteous man did not resist. Jesus lived and died like those desperate, poor, oppressed people so that he could rescue us from weeping and howling and the miseries that are coming. At that judgment, you'll see Jesus because he's the judge. He's the boss. You should be certain of that. Now, are you?